I need a person just like you, only different. She murmured after sobbing in my arms. I smiled, acting like it didn't destroy 3 years of trust. The words came out so softly that for a moment I thought I'd imagined them, but the way Jessica's fingers tightened against my shirt told me she knew exactly what she'd just said and exactly how it would land. I was sitting in Jessica's downtown apartment at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, surrounded by empty takeout containers from Tony's Diner and tissues that looked like snow across her hardwood floor. I'd gotten the call 4 hours earlier while pulling an all-nighter at my graphic design firm, working on a campaign for a boutique hotel chain that was due Thursday morning. "Ryan, I need you," she'd whispered through tears so thick I could barely understand her. "Please come over. I can't be alone right now." I'd saved my work, grabbed my keys, and driven across town without a second thought because that's what I always did when Jessica needed me. For 3 years, I'd been her constant through everything: her mom's cancer diagnosis, the layoffs at her marketing firm, her grandfather's funeral where she gripped my hands so tight during the service that my fingers went numb. I'd helped her move apartments twice, assembled furniture she'd bought impulsively, and spent countless nights like this one listening to her pour out her heart about whatever crisis was consuming her life. This time it was Marcus, her fiancé of 8 months, who she'd caught messaging his ex-girlfriend about meeting up to talk about old times, while planning weekend getaways behind Jessica's back. She'd found the texts while his phone charged on their kitchen counter, scrolling through months of conversations that made it clear their relationship had been a lie built on his inability to let go of his past. "He said he loved me," she'd sobbed into my shoulder around midnight, her voice muffled against my old college hoodie. "He said I was his future, but he's been planning to see her every weekend we weren't together. How stupid am I, Ryan?" I'd rubbed circles on her back and told her she wasn't stupid, that Marcus was the idiot for not recognizing what he had in her, that any man would be lucky to have someone as loyal and caring as she was. All true things that I meant completely, even though saying them felt like swallowing glass because I'd been in love with her since our junior year of college when she'd helped me through my own devastating breakup by bringing me homemade soup and staying up until dawn watching terrible movies until I could laugh again. But I'd never told her how I felt because our friendship was too important to risk, and because every time I considered it, she'd start dating someone new who seemed to fit perfectly into her life in ways I convinced myself I never could. Now she was curled against my side on her couch, wearing the oversized sweater she always put on when the world felt too overwhelming, and I could smell her vanilla shampoo mixed with the lingering scent of the Chinese food we'd barely touched. Her breathing had finally steadied after hours of crying, and I thought she might be falling asleep when she shifted against me and spoke those words that felt like a knife between my ribs. "I need someone exactly like you, Ryan, but different." The silence that followed stretched between us like a chasm, filled with everything I'd never said and everything she'd just made clear she'd never want to hear. I managed to keep my voice steady when I finally responded, "You'll find him, Jess. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." She made a small sound that might have been agreement or gratitude, and within minutes her breathing had deepened into sleep. I sat there holding her for another hour, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how words meant to comfort had managed to destroy something I hadn't even realized I'd been hoping for. When I finally extracted myself from under her and covered her with the throw blanket from the back of her couch, I looked down at her peaceful face and wondered if this was what it felt like to have your heart broken by someone who didn't even know they were holding it. I spent the next 3 days replaying those words in my head while trying to focus on the hotel campaign that was consuming my life at the design firm. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear Jessica's voice saying, "Exactly like you, but different," with such casual certainty that it felt like she'd been thinking about it for a while. By Friday afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore and decided to text her, hoping maybe I'd misunderstood or that she'd meant something less devastating than it sounded. "Hey, about what you said the other night when you were upset, what did you mean by someone like me but different?" I stared at my phone for 20 minutes after sending it, watching the read receipt appear immediately but no response. Then, instead of texting back, she called. "Ryan, can I come over? I really need to explain this in person. I'm outside your building." I buzzed her up, and when I opened my apartment door, Jessica looked worse than she had the night Marcus broke her heart. Her usually perfect makeup was streaked down her cheeks, her hands were shaking, and she was wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. "Please don't hate me," she said before I could even say hello, pushing past me into my living room and collapsing onto my couch. "I know what you're thinking, and you have every right to be angry, but I need you to understand something." I sat down across from her, maintaining distance because something about her energy felt dangerous. Understand what, Jessica? She took a shaky breath and looked directly at me for the first time since arriving. That comment wasn't some random thing I said while I was grieving. I knew exactly what those words would do to you because I've known about your feelings for over a year. The admission hit me like cold water. What are you talking about? Connor told me last spring during that poker night at his place. He'd had too much to drink and thought he was being helpful by letting me know how you felt about me. He said you'd been in love with me since college but were too scared to say anything because you didn't want to ruin our friendship. I felt my chest tighten as the betrayal sank in. Connor, my roommate and closest friend since freshman year, had violated my trust in the worst possible way. And you never said anything? What was I supposed to say? You never brought it up, so I figured you wanted to keep things the way they were. But Marcus knew about it too because I told him early in our relationship. I thought it was funny at first, having this devoted friend who would do anything for me. Her voice cracked on the last words, but she pushed forward. Marcus used to make jokes about it. He'd call you my backup boyfriend, and say things like, at least someone will take care of you if I don't. He thought it was hilarious how you'd drop everything whenever I needed something. I stared at her, trying to process what she was telling me. So when you said those words the other night, I was so angry about the breakup, so hurt and humiliated, that I wanted someone else to feel exactly what I was feeling. I wanted to hurt you the way Marcus hurt me because I knew those words would destroy you and I was too selfish and cruel to care. The confession hung in the air between us like poison. I'd expected maybe an apology or an explanation about being confused in her grief, but this was calculated cruelty disguised as vulnerability. You deliberately chose the most painful thing you could say to me. Yes, and I've been sick about it ever since. I haven't slept, I can barely eat, and I keep thinking about the look on your face when I said it. You tried so hard to hide how much it hurt, but I saw it anyway because I know you better than anyone. She was crying again, but these tears felt different from the ones she'd shed over Marcus. These felt manipulative, performed. I don't know how to fix this, Ryan. I don't know how to take back something so horrible, but I need you to forgive me because I can't lose you too. You're the most important person in my life, and I destroyed everything because I was too hurt and angry to think straight. I told Jessica I needed time to process everything she told me, and for the next 2 weeks I avoided her calls while trying to figure out how to move forward with someone who'd admitted to deliberately hurting me. Then came Dave and Sarah's wedding at the Botanical Gardens downtown, an event I'd been looking forward to until I realized Jessica would be there and I'd have to face her in public for the first time since her confession. I was standing at the bar during cocktail hour, nursing a whiskey and watching couples dance under string lights, when Marcus appeared beside me with a drink in each hand and a loose smile that told me he'd been there for a while. Ryan, my man. Good to see you. How have you been holding up since all the drama with Jessica? I turned to face him, surprised by how casual he sounded. I'm fine. How are you doing? Better than expected, honestly. Breaking up with her was the best decision I ever made, and I'm starting to think I did you a favor too. His words had an edge that made me pay attention. What do you mean? Marcus glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. Dude, she had this whole system she called her emergency husbands. Different guys she could call for different needs, and you were like her top-tier emotional support. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through screenshots. She showed me this ranking system she had for all her male friends. Look at this. He handed me his phone, and I stared at a group chat called The Council with Jessica and 3 of her girlfriends. The messages were screenshots of texts from various guys, including several from me, with commentary underneath that made my stomach turn. Poor Ryan is having another crisis about his promotion. Time to play supportive bestie and get some free dinner out of it, was attached to a screenshot of a text I'd sent her about being nervous for a presentation. Below that was a message from last Christmas. Emergency protocol activated. Ryan's bringing soup and staying the night. These boys are so predictable. Oh. Marcus scrolled down to show me more. She had detailed notes about everyone's weaknesses and triggers. Look, here's yours. Responds best to vulnerability and being needed. Abandonment issues from dad leaving. Will do literally anything if you cry first. Useful for emotional support, favors, ego boost when dating isn't going well. I stared at my own psychological profile written like I was a lab rat in one of her experiments. She wrote this about me? Oh, it gets worse. She had Brian pegged as her fitness motivation because he'd always compliment her appearance and make her feel desirable when she was feeling insecure. Tom from your college group was her financial emergency because he'd always lend money without asking questions. She had nicknames for everyone based on what she could get from them. Marcus took another drink and shook his head. The really messed up part is that she'd been planning to break our engagement for weeks. She timed it specifically so she could run to you for maximum emotional support and sympathy. She told me she wanted to test drive the breakup with someone who would make her feel better about herself. My hands were shaking as I handed his phone back. She planned the whole thing? Dude, she used to show me your texts during our private moments. We'd be in bed and she'd get a message from you being all sweet and supportive, and she'd read them out loud and laugh about how pathetically devoted you were. She made bets with her friends about what favors she could get you to do next. Remember when she asked you to drive her to that job interview at 6 a.m. because her car was supposedly in the shop? I nodded, remembering how proud I'd felt that she trusted me with something so important. Her car was fine. She just wanted to see if you'd wake up early and drive across town for her. She was testing your limits, seeing how much she could push before you'd say no. Marcus finished his drink and signaled the bartender for another. I thought it was just harmless girl talk at first, but then I realized she was treating all of you like emotional slaves. She had this whole network of guys wrapped around her finger, each one thinking they were special to her. The music and laughter around us felt surreal as I processed what Marcus was telling me. Why are you telling me this? Because she's about to come over here and try to get you back under her control, and you deserve to know what you're dealing with. She's been panicking ever since you stopped responding to her messages. Apparently, losing her main emotional support system is harder than she thought it would be. I spent the next 3 weeks avoiding Jessica's increasingly desperate messages while trying to process Marcus's revelations, but it was my roommate Connor who helped me understand the full scope of what I'd been dealing with. Connor had been carrying around guilt about revealing my feelings to Jessica, and when I told him what Marcus had shown me at the wedding, his face went pale. Dude, I think I need to show you something. I've been feeling terrible about that poker night, so I started paying attention to how Jessica talks about you, and it's way worse than I thought. He pulled up his laptop and opened a folder labeled Jessica Evidence that made my stomach drop. Remember how she always screenshots funny memes and texts to share with friends? Well, she's been screenshotting your most vulnerable messages and sharing them in a group chat with her girlfriends, but not the way you'd think. Connor showed me pages of screenshots from Instagram and Snapchat stories that Jessica's friends had posted and then deleted, not realizing Connor would see them. There were my texts about struggling with my dad's death anniversary, complete with laughing emojis from Jessica's friends and comments like, "He's so dramatic," and "Boys are so needy." My messages about feeling insecure at work were shared with captions like, "Emergency husband number 1 needs validation again face with rolling eyes," and "This is why I keep spare boyfriends." She's been treating your emotions like entertainment for over 2 years. Connor said, scrolling through more evidence. But here's the really sick part, she's been using the same tactics on multiple guys simultaneously. He opened another folder showing social media posts from Tom, Brian, and 2 other guys I recognized from college. Look at the pattern. She reaches out to each of you during different types of crises, and she's documented the whole thing like it's some kind of social experiment. Connor had found deleted blog posts from a private account Jessica thought no one knew about, where she wrote detailed analyses of her subjects and their psychological triggers. Subject A. Ryan responds best to displays of vulnerability and being positioned as the only person who understands me. His abandonment issues make him extremely reliable for emotional support and favors. Best approach: late-night crisis calls, physical contact during conversations, and frequent reminders of our special connection. The clinical language made me feel sick. Subject B. Tom has low self-esteem about his appearance and finances. responds well to being made to feel useful and needed. Financial requests should be framed as temporary emergencies to maintain plausible deniability about the relationship dynamic. She wrote this about all of us? It gets worse. She's been running experiments to test your boundaries and document the results. Remember when she called you at 3 a.m. crying about her car breaking down, and you drove across town to pick her up from that bar? I nodded, remembering how grateful she'd seemed and how good it felt to be her hero. Her car was fine. She wanted to see if you'd interrupt your sleep and drive 45 minutes for her without asking questions. She documented the whole thing. Subject A responded within 6 minutes of initial contact. Drove 47 minutes despite having work the next morning. Did not ask for proof of emergency or suggest alternatives. Boundary testing successful. Subject will prioritize my needs over his own well-being. Connor scrolled to another entry. Here's one from last month. Subject A becoming more emotionally dependent. Increased frequency of check-in texts and offers to help without being asked. Vulnerability conditioning working as expected. Subject appears to believe he has special insight into my emotional state and unique ability to provide comfort. I stared at the screen, watching my entire friendship with Jessica get dissected like a psychological case study. How long has she been doing this? Based on what I can find, at least 2.5 years. But Ryan, this isn't just about documenting behavior, she's been deliberately creating situations to manipulate you. Look at this entry from 6 months ago. The post was titled, Creating Artificial Intimacy, and detailed how Jessica had started sharing increasingly personal information with me to create a false sense of closeness. She's been using trauma bonding techniques on you. Sharing vulnerable stories, creating situations where you feel like her protector, positioning herself as someone who needs rescuing. It's all been calculated to make you emotionally dependent on feeling needed by her. 2 days after Connor showed me Jessica's psychological experiments, she ambushed me at my office building during lunch break, creating enough of a scene in the lobby that security got involved and I had to agree to meet her for coffee just to avoid further embarrassment. She arrived at the cafe with a manila folder and what looked like a rehearsed speech, sitting across from me with the kind of intense eye contact that used to make me feel special but now felt like another manipulation tactic. Ryan, I've been seeing a therapist since our last conversation, and I've learned so much about myself and my behavior patterns. Dr. Martinez has helped me understand that I have severe attachment issues stemming from my father abandoning our family when I was 12. She opened the folder and spread out printed worksheets and therapy homework assignments like evidence in a court case. Look, I've been working on identifying my triggers and understanding how my fear of abandonment has caused me to create these unhealthy relationship dynamics where I test people's loyalty instead of trusting them. I stared at the papers, noting how convenient it was that she'd suddenly developed psychological insight right when she needed my forgiveness. These worksheets show that I've been using manipulation tactics as a defense mechanism to protect myself from getting hurt, but I never realized how damaging it was to the people I care about most. Jessica, I know about the blog posts. I know about the group chat screenshots and the ranking system and the experiments you've been running on me for 2 years. Her carefully constructed expression cracked for just a moment before sliding back into place. I don't know what you're talking about, but if someone's been spreading rumors about me. Connor showed me everything. The detailed psychological profiles, the boundary testing, the way you've been documenting my responses like I'm a lab rat. Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, panic, calculation, then finally a cold anger that I'd never seen before. Yes, I kept notes about our friendship because my therapist suggested I track my relationship patterns to understand why I keep attracting toxic people. The gaslighting attempt was so blatant it would have been impressive if it wasn't so insulting. You called me Subject A, Jessica. You wrote detailed plans about how to manipulate my emotions and documented the results like I was part of some sick social experiment. That's not what those notes were about, and you're taking everything out of context because you're hurt and looking for reasons to vilify me instead of accepting my apology and working through this together like adults. She leaned forward with fake concern. I think you're having some kind of mental health crisis, Ryan. This paranoid thinking isn't normal for you. The attempt to make me question my own sanity might have worked 2 months ago, but now it just confirmed everything Marcus and Connor had told me. I'm not paranoid, Jessica. I'm finally seeing clearly. Seeing what clearly? That I made some mistakes when I was struggling with my mental health? That I've been trying to apologize and make things right while you've been completely shutting me out like our entire friendship meant nothing? The victim narrative was her last play, but I was done being manipulated. Our friendship did mean something to me, which is why finding out it was all a psychological experiment hurts so much. Her mask finally slipped completely, and I saw the real Jessica underneath, cold, calculating, and absolutely furious that her manipulations weren't working anymore. You want to know the truth, Ryan? Fine. You were pathetically obsessed with me, and I was doing you a favor by giving your boring, meaningless life some drama and purpose. You should be thanking me for making you feel important instead of acting like some tragic victim. The transformation was so complete it was like watching a different person speak. Every guy I know has some pathetic girl following him around, but you took it to a whole new level. Following me around like a lost puppy, dropping everything whenever I needed something, writing me these long emotional texts like we were in some romance novel. It was embarrassing. I stared at her, finally seeing the contempt she'd been hiding behind fake gratitude for years. If I don't forgive you and go back to being your emotional support system, I'll make sure everyone in our friend group knows exactly what kind of person you really are. I'll tell them about your pathetic crush and how you've been stalking me for years, making me uncomfortable with your inappropriate feelings. Jessica's threat to destroy my reputation backfired spectacularly because word of our public confrontation had already spread through our college alumni network, and I started receiving messages from other men who'd had eerily similar experiences with her manipulation tactics. The first was Tom Richardson from our accounting program, who reached out 3 days after the cafe incident with a message that made my blood run cold. Hey Ryan, I heard you had some drama with Jessica. I don't know if this is relevant, but she did something really similar to me last year and I've been wondering if I was the only one. Tom and I met for drinks that weekend, and his story was like looking into a funhouse mirror of my own experience. She had me categorized as her financial emergency guy. Whenever she needed money, she'd call crying about some crisis, her rent check bounced, her car needed repairs, her credit card got compromised. Always just enough of an emergency that I felt like a monster if I didn't help immediately. Tom pulled out his phone and showed me months of Venmo transactions. Look at this pattern. $200 in March for emergency car repairs, $350 in April for helping her mom with medical bills, $180 in May for replacing stolen laptop for work. I lent her over $2,000 last year, and when I finally asked about getting paid back, she accused me of trying to buy her affection and made me feel like a creep for keeping track. The second person to contact me was Brian Chin from Jessica's yoga class, who revealed he'd been designated as her fitness motivation in an arrangement that was both pathetic and infuriating. She'd text me photos from the gym asking if she looked good, send me pictures of healthy meals she was eating, ask me to reassure her that she was attractive when she was feeling insecure about her body. I thought we had this special connection where she trusted me with her vulnerabilities, but now I realize she was just using me as a human ego boost whenever her actual relationships weren't giving her enough validation. Brian showed me screenshots of messages where Jessica would fish for compliments with surgical precision, sending carefully angled photos with captions like, "Feeling gross today, but trying to stay motivated," followed by strings of heart and fire emojis when he'd respond with the validation she was seeking. The weird part is that she'd disappear completely whenever she was happy in a relationship, then reappear the moment things got rocky and she needed her confidence rebuilt. I was like an emotional vending machine she could access whenever she needed a self-esteem boost. The most shocking revelation came when Sarah Mitchell, Jessica's former roommate from senior year, reached out with evidence that made everything else look like amateur hour. "Ryan, I've been debating whether to contact you, but after hearing about what happened with Tom and Brian, I think you need to see this." Sarah had discovered Jessica's private blog during their time living together, a detailed journal where she documented her manipulation techniques and analyzed the psychological profiles of the men in her network. She wrote about all of you like you were test subjects in some twisted social experiment. She had theories about which personality types were most susceptible to different manipulation tactics, and she'd document the results of her tests to refine her approach. Sarah showed me printed copies of blog posts that read like a predator's handbook. Post number 47. Successfully tested emotional boundary with subject A, Ryan, by creating artificial crisis at 3 a.m. Subject responded within 6 minutes despite having important work presentation next day. Note: abandonment trauma makes him hypervigilant to distress signals. Can exploit this by timing requests during his most vulnerable emotional states. Another post detailed her strategy for financial manipulation. Subject B, Tom, has low self-esteem about his income relative to peer group. Most effective approach is to frame requests as temporary emergencies while emphasizing trust and special relationship. Never ask for amounts large enough to trigger his budgeting awareness, but maintain steady frequency to normalize the dynamic. The blog contained over 200 posts spanning 3 years, with detailed psychological profiles of at least 8 different men who she'd categorized by their usefulness to her. She specifically targeted guys who'd experienced trauma or rejection because she believed they'd be easier to control and less likely to establish healthy boundaries, Sarah explained. She called it her emergency husband protocol, maintaining a network of emotionally available men who she could activate for different needs without having to rely on any single relationship. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment across town, finally understanding what a healthy relationship felt like with Emma Rodriguez, a fellow graphic designer I'd met through a freelance project who treated me like an equal partner instead of a service provider. Emma had noticed my tendency to overgive and people-please during our first few dates, and instead of exploiting it like Jessica had, she gently called it out and helped me recognize the pattern. "You don't have to earn my affection by doing things for me," she'd said after I'd offered to redesign her portfolio website for free on our 3rd date. "I already like you for who you are, not what you can provide." The contrast with Jessica was so stark it was almost comical. Emma insisted on splitting dinner checks, planned dates where she could treat me, and actually seemed interested in my thoughts and feelings rather than just waiting for her turn to talk about herself. We'd been together for 4 months, and I'd never once felt like I was being used or manipulated. Tom, Brian, and I had formed an unexpected support group that met for drinks every few weeks, helping each other spot red flags in future relationships and process what we'd experienced with Jessica. "It's wild how obvious the manipulation was once you know what to look for," Tom said during one of our meetings. "The way she'd time her requests when we were most vulnerable, the love bombing followed by withdrawal, the way she'd make us feel special while actually treating us like disposable resources." Through therapy, I'd learned that my people-pleasing tendencies stemmed from growing up with an emotionally manipulative mother who'd used guilt and emotional blackmail to control my behavior, making me an ideal target for someone like Jessica who specialized in exploiting those exact vulnerabilities. Dr. Chen, my therapist, had helped me develop boundaries and recognize the difference between healthy reciprocity and emotional exploitation. People who genuinely care about you won't strategically test your limits or document your responses for future manipulation, she'd explained. They'll respect your boundaries and appreciate your kindness without trying to exploit it. The most satisfying part of my recovery was realizing that Jessica's manipulation tactics had actually backfired in the long run. By pushing away everyone who genuinely cared about her, she'd isolated herself completely and was apparently struggling to maintain any meaningful relationships. Through our mutual friend network, I'd heard that Jessica had moved to Portland after her manipulation tactics became widely known among our college alumni group, burning bridges with nearly everyone who'd previously supported her. Sarah had shared Jessica's social media posts with our group, showing her failed attempts to build new manipulation networks through dating apps and professional networking events. She's using the same playbook but with less success because she's targeting older, more experienced people who are better at recognizing manipulation, Sarah observed. Plus, her reputation from college has followed her to some extent because social media makes the world smaller. The last update I'd received was from Connor, who'd run into Jessica's younger sister at a coffee shop and learned that Jessica was working as a retail manager while living with 3 roommates, A dramatic downgrade from the lifestyle she'd maintained by exploiting her network of emergency husbands. Apparently she's tried to reconnect with several of the guys she used to manipulate, but word has gotten around and most people won't even respond to her messages, Connor reported. Her sisters seemed genuinely confused about why Jessica had so much trouble maintaining friendships and keeping boyfriends, which suggests Jessica's family has no idea about her manipulation tactics. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity when I heard these updates, satisfaction that there had been consequences for her behavior, but pity for someone who'd apparently never learned how to build genuine connections with people. Emma had helped me understand that holding on to anger toward Jessica was just another way of letting her control my emotional state, so I'd focused instead on building a life filled with people who valued authenticity over manipulation. My relationship with Emma continued to grow stronger, built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than psychological manipulation and exploitation, and I'd never been happier or more confident in my ability to recognize and avoid toxic relationship patterns in the future.